Turkey's release of the American priest Andrew Brunson on October the 12th. That transformed relations between Washington and Ankara. Washington had made it quite clear that was the number one problem between the two countries. Washington imposed these sanctions in July after the Turkish court refused to release Brunson. And Washington said then that more sanctions would follow unless Brunson was released. Now, since Brunson flew home 3 weeks ago, the US and Turkey have cooperated on two other issues. And I'm sure that the cooperation has promoted relations between the two countries. When it came to the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, both US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and CIA Director Gina Haspel came to Turkey to hear what evidence the Turks had uncovered. Secondly, when it came to the northern Syrian town of Manbij, they've been cooperating on launching patrols with the aim of cracking down on the Syrian Kurdish militia, the YPG. Joint patrols, US and Turkish soldiers together, began yesterday. President Trump spoke to President Erdogan on the phone yesterday. I'm sure today's lifting of sanctions was a product of that call. The two leaders are now talking, and that wasn't happening before Brunson was released.
OK, so a big change in those relations. But it's a bit early, isn't it, to say that the frosty relations that existed for quite some time between Washington and Ankara are a thing of the past, isn't it?
Certainly problems remain. You notice that America has not lifted the other sanctions it imposed in July. It doubled tariffs on imports of Turkish steel and aluminum. And now the imports of aluminum particularly hurt Turkey. These are the sanctions that really got to Turkey. The actions against the cabinet ministers were largely of symbolic value because Turkish cabinet ministers don't have bank accounts in New York. But I think America has not lifted the tariffs on Turkish steel and aluminum. Partly because of Trump's trade war against the rest of the world, and partly because the US is still angry with Turkey over the imprisonment of another American citizen, Serkan Golga, a scientist at NASA who is serving 5 years in a Turkish jail on charges of terrorism. Otherwise, Turkey wants to invade northeastern Syria to crush the Syrian Kurdish militia. But the US regards the Syrian Kurdish militia as a very effective fighting force against the Islamic State group. Then on Monday, US sanctions are due to go into effect against Iran, and Turks want an extension to those. So, there's still work to be done.